Eric's going to give you the rundown on everything that's changed and transpired over the last couple of years, because it's a lot. It's a lot, no doubt. Diving in here, just a quick note from our attorney. Obviously, this is not an offering of investment opportunity. In this presentation, we do highlight some investments with Ironton Capital toward the end. For that reason, we have to disclose some items here. You won't really necessarily see it in this presentation, but anything with Ironton related, you'll see forward-looking statements, and everything associated with the funds that we run is company sourced information. So all in all, we have a lot of folks on here who have sold properties. They've invested with us. We have folks that have just invested with us that have not sold properties. So regardless of your situation, if your goal is to ever invest passively, make sure you get all of your decision makers involved in your decision-making process. And that's what this note from our attorney covers here.
I can skip that.
Yep, we'll skip that. A little slow. Lon, do you want to give a rundown, since you're on the call, of yourself and the investment committee here at Ironton Capital?
Yeah, just briefly, for those of you who have not invested with us yet, there's 3 of us on investment committee that pick out the investments that go into our long-term national diversified fund, as well as the income funds that we've got. So that's just a quick rundown. I won't walk you through the list today, since we're mostly doing educational content today, not pitching people on investing with us. But if you want to talk to us about investing down the road, we're always happy to talk to you about that as well. What I do want to talk about before we get to all the legislation, which is really the meat of all this, is that we had a 12% growth in rental supply in 24, and we've surpassed the peak of new construction deliveries, and that it's all downhill from here for new construction. And the number of new units in 26 and 27 should be quite a lot less than what we had in 24 and 23. Meanwhile, we think that growth, well, it's probably not going to be like really rapid on the demand side. It's going to at least be flat. And growth last year was excellent. It was an all-time record number of new tenants that entered the market to take new units. So I'm expecting to see that vacancy will probably tick up a little bit this year, and that you'll probably see a little bit more concessions, but that it's going to get better in 26 and 27.
We're getting some commentary in here that people cannot hear.
Got it. Probably, why don't you ask if they can hear you and Eric, okay?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
And yeah, checking in here. So looks like most everybody can hear.
Okay, fantastic.
It might be on, for those who can't hear, maybe try rebooting.
That almost always solves it.
Yeah, that usually helps. Thanks for the feedback, guys.
So for those of you guys who need a little bit more of a deep dive on kind of the supply-demand balance and what's going on, we did a national real estate trends update. I think it was last Tuesday, and we recorded that. And I spent about the first 25 minutes talking about supply, demand, and what's going to happen with rent growth in quite a lot of depth. So I don't want to repeat it here, but if you guys need that, you can easily get that from Nick, and he'll get you all that information. So with that, I think we're going to turn the stage over to our star here.
Hey, again, always appreciate being able to come on here and chat. The last 36 months, 3 years, we've seen a ton of changes. We're going to kind of talk about what's happening right now. We'll touch on the big changes that really occurred in 2023. And we'll spend a lot of our time on the 2024 legislation, which fundamentally changed the way we operate within renewals. It was one of the bigger challenges. So 2025 updates, HB 1090, transparent pricing required, no hidden or surprise fees. Lon shared with his sphere. This got signed today by the governor. So this is law, HB 1090. And it prohibits pass-through fees like taxes, maintenance, anything that is considered habitability or keeping up with the property, as well as online payment costs. There's some caveats there. Tenants can sue immediately for violations. And what that means is typically if a tenant is going to sue a landlord for some of these laws that had come across in the last few years, they had to give notice to the landlord of intent to sue, and there was an opportunity to cure. One of the terrible parts of this law is Now they don't have to let you know; they can just go and sue you. This is a new law. Again, it just was literally signed in the last 24 hours. So the operational impact is a bit still unknown. The big parts of this that we do know is that on your lease, on your advertising online, you're going to have to clearly state any fees that are going to be charged to the tenant, including possible fees. So things like late fees, posting fees, insurance costs, if there are any, etc. So it'll be interesting to see. And as I was chatting with Nick and Lon, we'll likely try to do another session later this summer, post-legislative session, on what actually has passed, those operational impacts, and what you need to do to protect yourself if you're self-managing, or if you're a real estate professional, what you should advise your clients on. HB 1168 expands protections for domestic violence victims. We already have state laws on the books, which is a challenging thing. Is, do we really need more laws? But I guess the legislature decided that yes, we do. And so while this has not been signed into law yet, it did pass both houses and is headed toward the governor. So the laws we had on the books, there's a federal law called VAWA, Violence Against Women's Act. It does provide some protections for domestic violence victims. This goes a bit further in that it becomes an affirmative defense that they can simply state that they're a victim of domestic violence, that the domestic violence is what caused them not to be able to pay their rent. And it presents another set of challenges in the way we operate. It removes the ability to charge an early lease break fee, which is not something that we would do. It does allow for lock changes if there is another individual in the house and they are named as the perpetrator of the violence. Before, we would want to change the locks because it could constitute a constructive eviction. So that allows us property managers to protect tenants in that respect. The big thing here is that there has to be a repayment plan offered to the tenant in order to get them caught up. There's not a lot of clarity yet around how this payment plan is supposed to work, but they've outlined that it has to be a minimum of $25, and this payment plan has to go for 9 months. You cannot evict the tenant during this payment plan if they are making payments. So it should present some additional challenges in the way we operate around this. There are some items in there around we can recoup actual damages if there's vacancy loss for them breaking the lease. So this will be interesting to see the final effects of it and what this looks like from an operational level, whether you're managing yourself or for us on the property management side. The last one, 1108, it's called Letty's Law. Essentially, no rent acceleration or fees after a tenant's death. This is going to be effective on leases signed after September 1, 2025. And it basically says that if a tenant dies, the lease ends. With all three of these laws, it's kind of amusing to us in the property management world that they're making these very large, wide, sweeping laws. And we're not sure who does this. Like, who passes the property tax along to their tenant? It doesn't make sense. Again, who's not going to look out for a domestic violence victim, around, ensuring that they have safe housing, and who charges the dead guy rent after he's gone? It's bewildering to us that there's one or three landlords in the Denver market that does this, and now we have to have a law. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what happens as we've got about 30 days left in this legislative session, and kind of see what goes on here. So it looks like Gary said can you provide a scenario when the DV would dictate a repayment catch up? So and again, this is based on very limited information from our attorneys yet on how this is going to actually be implemented. But let's say that a tenant is behind on rent. We serve a notice to pay or quit. We go to court. They give us a self-attestation that they're a victim of domestic violence. And this domestic violence issue is what caused them not to be able to pay their rent. Then we would need to either through the court or prior to court offer them a payment plan to deal with that back pay over that time. And Gary, it's a great question. Again, we're really still trying to understand how this is going to be implemented and what the actual process looks like. I've spent several hours in the recent couple weeks with our attorneys on webinars trying to understand what this looks like. So would they need to document that DV? So it does expand the documentation beyond what's current in VAWA, and that can be a police report, that can be a restraining order or a protective order. It could be from a healthcare provider, and now they've added self-attestation, which is essentially the tenant, signing an affidavit stating that this is indeed domestic violence and this is why they can't pay their rent. We're really not sure how this is going to be viewed by the court and how this is going to look as we go forward. So I'll be presenting tomorrow at the Your Castle company meeting. I'm so fortunate to be able to go and chat with that amazing group. This will be the same information. And really, it's just kind of letting everyone know this is what's on the outlook outside of 1090, which has been signed. Brenda asked, does the DV protection apply in other states? Not really sure how that would have. So if it was an out-of-state tenant, not really sure there, Brenda, or Brita. I apologize. So not sure how that would work if it was in another state. Any other questions here on what we've got here in 2025? Again, the top one being signed. Oh, if we're copying laws from other states, probably. I don't know if that came from somewhere else as like our for-cause eviction has. So any other questions here on this 2025 stuff?
Looks like no other questions for now.
Yep. So we'll hop over to the next one at your leisure, sir. So 2023, it was the year of laws. So we had these 9 new laws that came into effect. If you've been in the industry, if you've been managing your own properties over the last 18, 24 months, you know a lot about these. So I'll hit the high level on each of these quickly. If you have questions, happy to answer those. Pet ownership and housing, it did restrict preventing certain types of breeds and rentals, essentially breed restrictions that insurance companies put into place have kind of gone away. Pet fees are a thing of the past. Any upfront fee now has to be a refundable deposit. It's $300 max. There's some argument still of is it per pet or per unit. We've taken the conservative route and said per unit. And then you can charge $35 a month pet rent or 1.5% of the rent as additional rent for those pets. The big thing here is it does need to be a refundable deposit, not a pet fee, which is something that we saw a lot of leading up to this bill. HB 1099 portable screening reports. It's funny, Colorado Public Radio did a great story on this a few months back of this amazing law that was going to help tenants prevent them from paying all of these application fees. And no one has still figured out how to use this law. There is not currently a commercially available tenant screening report that a tenant can provide that follows the bill. Essentially says that if a tenant provides you with a portable tenant screening, that you can't charge them a fee unless there's some caveats as to whether or not you can charge a fee. What we simply do in this case, if someone brings us a report, we say, thank you very much. We really appreciate that. We're still going to run our own background. We simply just don't charge it. And in my case, the client takes that fee on behalf of the tenant. There is a law that they're kicking around to expand this. We don't think that it's going to pass as it stands, but stand by. You never know what we're going to get next. 1095 disallows several lease clauses that had previously been standard. The big ones here is the ability to waive a right to a class action lawsuit. That was a really big one around HB 1095. There were some other exculpatory language that had been removed. It also triggered the fight that we've had over the last couple of years around jury trials, as it did remove the ability to waive a jury trial, except in the case of possession only. There is a jury bill kicking around the State House currently, but we feel like it's not getting the traction and will likely not pass. Keep your fingers crossed and keep reaching out to those legislators to work for us. Eviction protection for residential tenants, 1120. So it slows and complicates the legal eviction process, to say the least. The big one here is if they receive SSI, SSDI, or cash from Colorado Works, they're entitled to mediation. If they receive those funds, they are also given an extension on the writ of restitution. We've seen a lot of mediation in doing this. It has not resolved any problems. It just slows the process to a non-paying tenant. Hopping back up top, 1186, remote participation. So this has been a thing since COVID. It does allow for it does allow for tenants to show up via online. So no real big digs there. 1254 habitability. It's funny, they passed an update to the habitability law, and then in 24 they completely rewrote it. So this one is almost irrelevant at this point. Illegal drug laboratory and property certification, very similarly to on the sales side for the real estate professionals. If you are dealing with a drug lab, it has to be remediated to the state standard. It is now the same for rental units. SB 184, protections for residential tenants with a subsidized. So this is around subsidized applicants. So think Section 8, think Salvation Army. Denver Host has been doing a lot with CEDP, but it essentially prevents us from considering a tenant's credit score or negative credit information when screening a tenant and providing housing. So essentially, we are precluded from using a credit score or negative information from denying housing to a subsidized individual. Finally, SB 206, we now have to disclose radon, and that has trickled into the real estate world as well. You have to disclose if there's been a radon test, if there's radon equipment in place. If a tenant requests radon testing, they are responsible for it at their cost. And if there are levels above the EPA requirement, an owner is required to mitigate, or the lease is voidable. So that was 2023. It was a whirlwind as we dealt with it all. Looks like we've got a couple of questions. Where can I get a lease that reflects all the current changes? I know Greg Parham does a really good job with his leases. Our lease goes through legal review with our attorneys. Most property management companies are going to have their own internal. I'm not sure or aware of a solid kind of to the public lease unless you're a member of AAMD, Apartment Association of Metro Denver. They do provide a lease as well. So consult your legal team. And if you know Greg Parham, he does a really great job as well. And then Jorge asked, clearly there have been many legislative changes in the last 3 to 4 years. Question is, have you noticed, has it actually led to a drop in fewer smaller rental property owners? Yes, it has. And it's only exacerbating the challenge of the housing shortage here in the Denver market. So a lot of landlords and folks like you are on the call today who maybe have one, you're looking at all these legal changes and go, I've got $200,000 of equity. I bought this thing a decade plus ago. We've appreciated well. Why would I do this? So yes, Jorge, we are seeing onesies and twosies exit the market, sell those to owner occupants, and create another set of challenges around the overall housing shortage. Gary, great question. Not sure who to blame here.
Question from CR.
Yep. Go ahead.
With all the apartments coming online, is there still a shortage? Good question, CR. I'll chime in. Lon might be able to answer this too, but I believe it was third quarter and fourth quarter of last year is when we reached peak supply of apartment supply. We are now in the downward trend. May take some time for a lot of that to get absorbed, but we are now in a downward trend toward more normal levels, probably a little bit below normal levels. So we'll probably be in more of a supply constrained environment. Lon, I'd probably guess by maybe end of this year, early next year on the apartment side.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good guess. It's going to be a much more problem of a glut on the A-plus properties in downtown Denver or Rhino. And for those of us that have got, suburban properties, it's a whole lot less of an issue for us. And for those of you guys who have single family homes, you're probably not impacted by it very much at all.
DR, if you want to reach out to me, Nick at IrontonCapital.com, I've got a great chart that'll show you where we're at in apartment supply. So if you want to get that, feel free to reach out to me. It's a good visual.
And one thing there is, these apartments that are coming online, they are class A, class AA, really nice. And so when an owner sells a single family home in GVR or a condo in, First Creek, it's not a one-to-one comparison. So when we sell a class B minus residential unit condo in Aurora, that unit that's coming online is not, those tenants aren't going to move to downtown Denver and pay $18,000, $19,000, $2,000 for the one bed. So it does still continue to exacerbate the challenge when private landlords that have normal middle of the road blue collar housing units continue to sell. Roxy, do you have to take a subsidized tenant? So source of income is a protected class. And so that means that if they receive a voucher and they receive subsidized money from Section 8, Housing Choice Voucher, etc., yes, you cannot preclude them from renting because they receive a voucher. Gail, please keep writing. We do appreciate that. Emily, that's a great question around the new law that applies to 12-month leases. We're going to come to that next. That's been one of the most impactful in our business. So stay tuned for just a couple more moments. We'll jump into that monster. Let's see. Thank you for putting Greg's information out there. Please tell him I sent you. We love Greg Parham.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Les, I have not heard of CPN, so not sure what that is. So don't know if I can comment there. Jorge's back with notice any trends on A versus B versus C, different locations around the metro area and cap rates. Sure. I believe Lon may be able to provide some stats here, but your kind of B and C condos in Central Aurora, West Denver, etc., have really been challenged on the sale side. There's a ton of inventory. Prices are a bit lower, and we're seeing that as well on the rental side. Lon, what do you have there on the kind of B and C condo market?
If you're in a not great condo development, you can list at a 7% cap rate with tenants in place, and you still won't be able to sell it. So apparently, it's something higher than a 7. If you guys are looking for more properties, I have 4 condos with owner financing. If you can let me know about that if you're interested. But if it's a nice property, you probably could get away with a 6.5%, I'd imagine, cap rate for a C class.
Jorge, you asked about apartments earlier. On the apartment side, I think we're still seeing some getting listed in the 5.25 to 5.75. Now that's probably more Class B and A.
Yeah.
I can tell you as an example, we've got an investment in Ironton where we listed at about 5.75, and we've had to reprice to a 6%. And this is in Westminster. So that should hopefully give you some kind of an idea, if you're a bit outside the metro area, how things might be priced at. And the movement of the 10-year Treasury isn't helping anybody right now. We're not really getting any reprieve from that side of things.
So Jim, for a single family, you're going to sell it to an owner occupant. You're not going to sell it to an investor. So the cap rate doesn't matter.
Winter, the new 90-day notice of non-renewal required by landlords. Does this mean we can reciprocate and demand a 90-day notice of non-renewal from the tenant? Absolutely, and we're gonna hop into that here next. And by no means is the approach CRT management takes the only approach, but it is what we found to work. So, Nick, if you want to cue that up for us.
Yep.
Here we go. HB 24-1098 for cause evictions. So the things that we can still evict for that does not trigger this: non-payment of rent, material violation of the lease, repeated violation of the lease after proper notice, substantial violations, which is typically going to be around drugs and violence. Tenant creates a nuisance or disturbance, quiet enjoyment with other occupants of the property, and the tenant is negligently damaging the property. So those are still all good reasons that we can give a notice to correct. If they don't, then we can give a notice to quit for repeated violations or an uncured violation. So the core of what we can still evict for lives on. For any action, we do have to serve a demand allowing a tenant to fix the issue or cure. Substantial violations, there is no right to cure. It's a 3-day notice. We're done. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Substantial and repeat violations, we do have to serve a notice of termination with no opportunity for the tenant to cure. It gets very nuanced in that if you're looking to evict your tenants, I highly recommend reaching out to legal. I have folks call me and say, here's my situation. I will always say, hey, I'm neither an attorney nor a tax professional. If you need that information, please seek it. But we operate based on what our attorneys provide to us. So, if you've got that situation at hand, definitely call your attorney. So no fault, non-renewal notices or notice to vacate have become very strict in how we operate, and there are hefty penalties for misuse. The law outlines the reasons that we can give them a no-fault termination, and before we initiate these proceedings, we must give them a termination notice, and it has to be 90 days prior to that lease termination. So plan substantial repairs or renovations to the premises. So this was one that we used regularly in the industry of, hey, we're going to redo the bathroom carpet and paint. We need you to move out. That's no longer substantial. So if those repairs are going to take more than 90 days, you can give them a notice of substantial repairs, but you still have to give the tenant a right of first refusal. It gets a little murky. It's not one of our favorites. Planned occupancy of the premises by the landlord or a member of the landlord's family. Again, little murky here. If you own one unit and you're moving your mother in, hey, you're good. If you own a 4 or 8-plex and there's other units available, it gets pretty murky there. Planned withdrawal of the premises from the rental market for the purpose of selling or changing the use. So if you're going to move it to a short-term rental, that would be a reason. Make sure you check your local regulations on can you short-term rent it, or if you're going to sell the property. The next one is our favorite, and it really does speak to Winter's question: the refusal of a tenant to sign a new lease with reasonable terms. So if we provide the tenant a renewal and it has reasonable terms, they refuse to sign it, we can absolutely now give a notice to terminate. And this is the number one reason that we send these notices of terminations these days, is we've provided you a renewal lease. We gave you ample time to review it and sign it. You did not. Here's your notice to terminate. We're done here. And that has increased renewal rates significantly. And it does allow for rent increases so long as they are reasonable and within market conditions. This is the most challenging section of this law. A history of the tenant's late payments of rent greater than 10 days, more than 2 times, and not cured as allowed under other statutes. So I need everyone to put on their dumbass hat and let's walk through what this just said. So a history of a tenant's late payment greater than 10 days. So last year, one of the laws, or in 2023 rather, one of the laws is we capped late fees at 5% or $50, whichever is greater. And we specified that rent is late after 7 calendar days after it due. So the following year, we decided that, yes, we can still charge that late fee 7 calendar days later, but let's give them another 3 days before we add this in, more than 2 times, meaning 3. So just say 3, and has not cured as allowed under other statutes, which means that we have to post a notice to pay or quit, a demand for payment, based on what type of property you have. Is it CARES Act or non-CARES Act? And I'm happy to go into that. You have to give them a notice, and they have to pay outside of the cure period. So a scenario would be rent's due on the 1st, 7 calendar days later, we post a notice on the 8th. It is a CARES Act covered property, which means they get a 30-day notice to pay or quit. We have to serve this twice, so we've added 3 days in. So now our cure period is the following month on the 11th. So a tenant is now 41 days late. That's 1 late payment under this statute. Again, put on your dumbass hat. It makes no sense. So very rarely are we able to give a notice of non-renewal around this specific part of the statute. It has become a challenge.
Got a couple of questions here, Eric. I apologize if you already answered this. Is it still
Nope.
24-hour notice to inspect? Did you already answer that?
I did not. So it's based on your lease terms, but that's considered reasonable. 24-hour notice when practicable. When not practical, then typically a tenant or a landlord can enter, especially in the case of emergency, running water, and you need to secure the property. But 24 hours notice is the kind of the rule of thumb here. Roxy, how much can we increase rent? There is no amount that you can, or there's no limit to the amount that you can increase. We've been given guidelines around 10% is on the upper end. And it really just depends on market conditions, where the lease is, how far away from market rent they are. If you can make a business case that this tenant has been in place for $1,200 and market rent is $1,800, would you want to go the full $600? Probably not. You're probably going to lose a tenant. But are you able to push that a couple of $100 to get them closer to rent or market rent? Is probably okay. It really is just based on market conditions. Brittany, great. If my tenant has told me that and they do not plan to renew when the lease is up, do I need to send them a notice of termination to protect myself in the event that they do not move out on the lease end date? Is the notice of termination unnecessary because I have in writing their decision not to renew? That's a great question, Emily. It's a little unclear because it's not been tested in the courts yet. If we receive a notice to terminate, we utilize that notice to terminate as in writing that they plan on leaving. If we receive that less than 90 days, we don't send a new notice of termination. If we receive that notification in our renewal process well before, we will still provide them a notice to terminate just to cover ourselves. It is a bit murky, but if you have in writing that the tenant is vacating, that is constructive notice from the tenant that they do not intend to renew and they do intend to leave, you should be okay. But again, I would consult an attorney there if that comes up. Gary, so 30 days plus 10, i.e. 41st day to cure, more or less, yes, Gary. And then rent increase for Section 8 only to the max on their regs. Correct. So each year, the HUD comes out with FMR, fair market rents, as well as rent reasonableness for the asset and the asset class. It is, based on market conditions. And yes, you can increase to the max for the voucher, assuming that it will still pass rent reasonableness. Denver numbers have gone through the roof. People ask me regularly, hey, does that mean I can get this much? No, it means we can try, but we have to make it make sense from a market rent perspective. Emily, send the letter you received, non-notice of CYA. You're not wrong, Gary. The challenge is if they give notice with 30 or 45 days and you give that 90 day, you've essentially given them carte blanche to extend it. We offered a tenant non-renewal due to withdrawing for us to list for sale. He came back and offered a 22% rent increase if we allow him to continue at that rate. Despite him initiating this, could this come back to bite us? As no, I don't think so. I mean, he offered to give you more rent to stay for another period of time. I can't imagine where that would be problematic. Again, there is no current cap on rent increases. Continuing here with 1098, because we're not done yet. Legislation includes new rules on how notices and demands are posted. They must clearly state lease violation, eviction reasons, and deadlines for compliance or vacating. The notice must be in English, Spanish, or the tenant's primary language if known to the landlord. So if you know for a fact your tenant speaks Swahili, you're posting it in Swahili. And that is a thing. So if you're going to post it in the tenant's primary language, make sure you also post it in English because I've yet to meet a judge here in Colorado that speaks Swahili. So we want to make sure that the judge is able to read the notice that we've posted. The way we post has also changed. So they can be served by handing a copy directly to the tenant personal service or any tenant family member over the age of 15. If unsuccessful on the first attempt, we have to attempt a second time, at which point posting in a conspicuous place is still allowed. So it is, and that's where I added those 3 days in our posting, trying to get someone out based on the 3 day late payments. What questions do we have there, Nick?
Yep. So receipt of non-renewal by landlord would trigger a 90-day notice to vacate? Question mark.
Yes, it does make no sense. So in our current operation, we start the renewal process 155 days prior to lease expiration. So if there's any of my clients on the call this evening, they have leases that are expiring in August, and we are already reaching out asking for owner intentions. Hey, owner, do you want to continue to rent the property? That happens at 155 days to 135 days prior to expiration. We then do a walkthrough or a pre-expiration inspection with the tenant to ensure that the unit is in good enough condition and we feel they're eligible for a renewal. And there's nothing within this HB 1098 that would prevent us from offering a renewal. The tenant then gets a renewal lease 4 months, 120 days prior to their expiration, and they have 30 days to sign it. If day 95 comes, 95 days before their lease expires, and they have not signed that lease, we provide that notice of termination pursuant to refusal to sign a renewal lease with reasonable terms. We then give that tenant an additional 60 days to sign it before we pull the renewal and then begin marketing the property. So imagine you're a tenant, you moved in literally 5.5 months ago, and your landlord's already asking you, hey, do you want to renew? That's what this law has caused. All right. Warranty of habitability updates. This has been a very large challenge around the way we operate as landlords. So it has expanded what is considered habitability, mostly around moisture and mold. It mandates that landlords have to address and resolve the uninhabitable conditions promptly. It does create a presumption of landlord negligence if you don't fix the issue. It defines when landlords are deemed aware, so that's whether it's be email, phone call, constructive notice. It does require a landlord to provide 60 days of alternative housing during the repairs. You do have to keep better records of the claims and actions taken. It does require new agreements to include reporting procedures for unsafe conditions, meaning, hey, if your unit if you find uninhabitable conditions, please notify us by X. It does clarify again what those uninhabitable conditions are. It presumes more conditions as harmful to tenants' life, health, and safety, and it modifies the remedies and access procedures and claims against landlords. As I've said, since this law hit the books April of last year, if a tenant calls and says they have a habitability issue, I strongly advise reaching out to your attorney. We take habitability claims very, very seriously, and it's not something that can be overlooked or played with. One thing that I will share, and it's a newer trend, is meth. Meth is back. And we are dealing with more meth units than we have in the past. And meth is absolutely habitability. So if you're given notice that there may be meth or there's suspected meth use in the property, you definitely need to address that as an uninhabitable condition. Document everything, as we're seeing more and more of those as it stands.
So it's SB 24094 apply to owners of one rental.
SB, let's see, is that, which one is that? 094. Maybe 095? SB 24, where am I missing that, sir? 094. Oh, warranty of habitability right there. I'm sorry. My apologies, Stephen. Missed it at the top there. Does it apply to owners of one? Yes, absolutely. It is state law, and there is no small landlord provision that prevents you from having to deal with that. So it absolutely does apply.
Eric, quick question. All of these laws apply to Colorado as a state, right? None of them are just simply.
Yeah, these are state. Absolutely, these are state laws. We haven't talked about Denver rental licensing or any of the municipality leveled stuff. I mentioned CARES Act earlier. I'll cover that really quickly. I'm sure most of you guys already know. Kenneth. Oh, that's hilarious. And yes, you do. I don't even have words for this, my friend. The CARES Act was signed into, was part of the COVID relief. I created the eviction moratorium. It also outlined the notice period if you're a CARES Act covered property, meaning you have a federally backed mortgage, Fannie, Freddie, FHA, VA. And it does say that if your property is a CARES Act covered property, or if you have a Section 8 tenant who receives federal funds, it now becomes a CARES Act property or CARES Act covered individual. And that triggers that 30-day notice rather than the statutory 10-day notice. Kenneth, I really don't have good words for this, but yes, if they smoke meth and tell you, you do have to test. If it comes back hot, you do have to put them up in alternative lodging, and they may create another meth house. I don't have a better explanation. If your unit is damaged by weather or natural disaster, do you have to house your tenants? That's a little murky, but the short answer is yes. It depends on if it's fire or weather. It depends on how much of the property may not be usable. The tenant does have the right to void the lease. If you get into that situation, Robert, I would absolutely consult your attorney. Great questions, and funny ones as well. Again, it's some of the stuff that we just shake our head at on a day-to-day, and how do they even come up with this? So that's the big and heavy of it. What it means and who to call. These will continue to reshape how we advertise, lease, and respond. If you're a real estate professional, if you're an investor, myself and a lot of people in our industry, we're out here staying ahead of the compliance and not scrambling. We're already adjusting our policies and our lease. It's going through a new review. If you don't know what you're doing, if you have a question, call me, call your attorney. We'll find the right answer. We're here as a resource. A lot of folks that I've worked with through the years pick up the phone and say, "Hey man, I have a question."
Sounds like that's it. Well, if you guys have any other questions, there's Eric's information there. He's a wealth of knowledge. He's always available, so feel free to use him.
All right. Well, hey, again, thanks, guys. Look forward to the next time we get together.